Hello and welcome to VoTY broadcast. Today we've got Arman on the show, our science correspondent, and we'll be discussing Venus, the planet that nobody talks about. It's dwarfed by planets such as Jupiter and Saturn, but as Arman will show us, I'm sure, it's actually, as he's called it, Earth's twin from hell. Arman, tell us why you've dubbed it that.
I've dubbed it the twin from hell because I've called it a twin because, they're just so similar when you first look at them. Because, for example, they're the same size, they consist of the same materials, they're built around the same time, from the same stuff, both the same age, roughly the same size. So, and they're located from the same distance from the sun. So, therefore, when you think about it, well, they should be really similar to each other. But I've called it from hell because it's just so different to Earth in terms of hostility towards anything biological, and it's just a vision of hell, really, once you look at all the different geological processes that are happening on the planet.
Tell us more, because I understand that they sent a probe there and it only lasted for a very short time. So tell us more about the hostility that you describe.
Yes, it did. As you were talking about the Venera probe, which was a Russian probe that the Russians sent to Venus to study, and it only lasted there for about just over an hour, and that's because it's just so hot on the surface. It's in fact the hottest planet in our solar system, even hotter so than Mercury, which is the closest planet to the Sun, and that's because of the greenhouse effect that takes place because of its immense atmosphere and the immense amount of gases that are there. And that's another thing that contributes to its hellish environment. For example, there's so much gas that's in the atmosphere. We think of gases not actually weighing a lot, but they actually do. And the fact that there's so much carbon dioxide, etc., in the atmosphere, it actually has a weight, and that weight is pretty extreme. It can crush cars. So yeah, if you were to land on Venus, you'd quickly want to come back to Earth because, well, it's just a competition whether you either burn to death or you're crushed to death. It also rains sulfuric acid, which would be in your eyes, your nose, your lungs, and it would just be completely inhostile for life.
Yeah. So how did Venus become such a... I understand that you mentioned in the article that it could at one point have supported life, but how has it become so different to Earth in this way?
Well, as I said, because they were so similar, they were of all the similarities I was listing at the beginning. But obviously, Earth and Venus took two different turns, which I mentioned in my article, where both of the planets took two very big collisions in their infancy. During the formation of the solar system, and the Earth's collision, which was an impact from a Mars-sized planet called Theia, which sped up the Earth's rotational spin, and it changed our axis, and it actually led to the formation of the Moon from the ejected debris. And this gave us our magnetic field. This is what shielded off the sun's harsh radiation from us, and therefore life was just able to take hold because conditions were made a lot better, essentially. But whereas Venus, around the same time, took another head-on collision from a large planet as well. And during this collision, it actually was so powerful enough that it changed the planet's spin. And obviously that's a lot of energy. But from this, but because it changed the planet's spin, the planet was, it reversed its spin, so therefore its spin actually became pretty slow. And that spinning of the planet, that spinning of the core, is what generates magnetic fields. That's what fends off radiation from the sun and from coming from elsewhere in the universe. And this made it pretty inhostile for life. And this it also relates to the volcanic activity on both planets. So where Earth has a lot of volcanoes, etc., Venus has many more volcanoes, has the most volcanoes in the solar system of any planet, nearly twice as much as Earth. And this is due to well, it's not due to anything, but because of these volcanoes, as a result, the atmosphere became much thicker from the volcanoes emitting carbon dioxide, etc., sulfur dioxide, and from this, the atmosphere was built up, and this greenhouse effect actually built up along with it. This heated up waters, and this has heated up oceans, and in fact, it got so hot that it didn't even rain anymore. As soon as rain started to form, it just evaporated. And then the radiation coming from elsewhere, because of its weak magnetic field, was stripped away from its atmosphere.
Yeah. And
So,
then in your article, you mentioned that at one point it would be possible for Venus to become more of a life-supporting planet, more like Earth. Can you just explain how the current climate, the hostility there, makes it so unsupportive of life in contrast to what it would have used to been?
um, so Venus is not any. It's not going to become more habitable. I suppose it's not going to become less hostile. But the hostile conditions now in contrast with the conditions, well, that may have been like say 4 billion years ago. They would have been pretty similar to a volcanic landscape like you get here on Earth. For example, in Iceland, we have many volcanoes erupting into the sea, or the Galapagos, for example. You'd probably see a pretty similar landscape where you'd have the volcanoes, the lava, the ash heading, bordering with the ocean, and pretty misty, hazy atmosphere from all the volcanic gases coming from the volcanoes. I think it would look pretty similar to that.
And then in your article, you posed the question: is Earth going to take the route, that same route? Is it also going to become Venus's twin from hell? If so, how will that happen? Because you mentioned forces like the greenhouse effect, you mentioned magnetic fields, you mentioned volcanoes. So is it possible for Earth to take the same route of hostility?
Yes, it definitely is. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of factors that could influence this. For example, if we take some other collision in, say, a few billion years or whatever, scientists can't accurately predict what's going to happen. But if we take one scenario where we don't have a collision, for example, or if we just say that everything's going normal and see what happens from there, then definitely I think the Earth could take that same route and actually become worse and overtake the hostile conditions that we see on Venus as well.
And then obviously currently we're struggling with our climate because obviously it has been proven that humans have had a detrimental effect on the Earth's climate. Could our action